Ribatega, Hamibuso Ewen, Hachaba City Men, Hafatele Regate, Ribatega, Habo Pelobo Fen, Haritu Hariwen, Zoshele Fair, Rita Dega, Fela Lama Fair, Yakuba Dwayadwe, Gwana Shoko Ye Pep, Rasala Reshuti Fair, my Toreleza Moye. Hatsoko Tsesebake, Ribatega, Hamibuso Ewen, Hachaba City Men, Hafatele Regate, Ribatega, Habo Pelobo Fen, Haritu Hariwen, Zoshele Fair, Rita Dega, Fela Lama Fair, Yakuba Dwayadwe, Gwana Shoko Ye Pep, Rasala Reshuti Fair, my Toreleza Moye. Hatsoko Tsesebake, Onalele Modishan, Hasifuba Sifil, Sankabeke Zeta, Ria Balifulari. I felt like a high over Spitlele hotels. May I see a one, I yell a Hutana hood. Molekane, I so bad, you are so getting mobu. The Salanella fell out on a half petola mass. But Haisa never fetide le Magella talk. Bareba Tabatwite, Gampabata Selites. Yabaka, Hose Chelete, Yazalebat. Never Pela Gaurikisa, Yele by Sukud. Kwedu Fitile Zebe, Ribasemo Sebezi. Data Gana Bese, Alo Fola di Feme. I take it Debe, Abu Petana Zele. But it did a whole Fuba Putet Batlang. Musonan Zeta Tepiso Fela Moye, Hapata Kopota Resalin Dwelling to Saburi. Ribatega, Hamibuso Ewen, Hachaba City Men, Hafatele Regate, Ribatega, Habo Pelobo Fen, Haritu Hariwen, Zoshele Fair, Rita Dega, Fela Lama Fair, Yakuba Dwayadwe, Gwana Shoko Ye Pep, Rasala Reshuti Fair, my Toreleza Moye. Hatsoko Tsesebake, Ribatega, Hamibuso Ewen, Hachaba City Men, Hafatele Regate, Ribatega, Habo Pelobo Fen, Haritu Hariwen, Zoshele Fair, Rita Dega, Fela Lama Fair, Yakuba Dwayadwe, Gwana Shoko Ye Pep, Rasala Reshuti Fair, my Toreleza Moye, Hatsoko Tsesebake. Bomele bontat, Sebata Kese, Hodumale Saitsebe Heki on a Twitchy. Fule hopo makaditaba COVID-19 ke lufule so thumalika hotso ke ipate mahlo ha sa batlo bona tlhaka ya te na habule fatshe kaofela ikaba rentse tshaba sa fela sa qepha tse re shebi corona ya qeta ya mes ga shware hetli tutswana ya tshesana ga sesa ka haratla puso ya tsiapa ga ya malopolopo ka le ruora aroha re kopa mohao Zinene ya chora bana ya na ya hla galele kisa ka tleba ka nqena na kwa tsamaya hlompha bophelo fela skewe nehe a fela ntsegele ka bata sena sona stlawe Ribatega, Hamibuso Ewen, Hachaba City Men, Hafatele Regate, Ribatega, Habo Pelobo Fen, Haritu Hariwen, Zoshele Fair, Rita Dega, Fela Lama Fair, Yakuba Dwayadwe, Gwana Shoko Ye Pep, Rasala Reshuti Fair, my Toreleza Moye, Hatsoko Tsesebake.
Shomula le fatili yalla di fuli anagale kalla batu basho ba fela ba shwakahala.
Welcome to the Numbers as Faces creative campaign brought to you by the Open Society Initiative for Southern Africa in collaboration with 5 storytellers from South Africa, Lesotho, Malawi, and Zimbabwe. The purpose of the hashtag Numbers as Faces campaign is to shed light on your stories and your experiences during this time. How are you coping with the COVID-19 pandemic? And how is this pandemic shaping our lived experiences? Hi, I am Ingrid Bame. I am hailing from the vibrant city of Johannesburg in South Africa. I am a radio enthusiast, and that also includes me being a radio producer, a co-host on a radio show called Personified.
Hi, my name is Lerato Hande. I am a visual artist and a podcast producer. When I first heard about COVID-19, I certainly didn't think it would have the impact it has had over the past year and a half.
Hi, my name is Runyararo Nyakwande. graphic designer based in Mutare, Zimbabwe. It's been an awesome experience working in collaboration with OSISA on this project.
Hi, my name is Lee Braff, and I'm a UX designer, an illustrator, and a photographer, currently based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
My name is Mary, and I'm the coordinator of the hub in Morija, Lesotho. And I've also been coordinating our work on this creative agency project with OSISA. And it's also been fun to collaborate with my team members at the hub on the project. And I think we've learned a lot of valuable skills through this, and those skills will definitely carry over to our daily work at the hub. And I've also loved getting to know some of the extremely talented artists who are part of the creative agency.
You gotta practice patience. When things don't add, you gotta go to basics. When you have no cash, you gotta go to Vegas. When your skin's all black, you gotta face the matrix.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. It is officially the 20th of May, and we are excited to be launching the hashtag Numbers as Faces Creative campaign. If you're joining us right now, that means that you are familiar with us. It's either you've been following us on Twitter, on Facebook, or even on Instagram, obviously with the handle at Numbers as Faces. This is a creative campaign that has been put together by a collective of creatives throughout different parts of the continent within Southern Africa specifically. And this is also aided by the Open Society Initiative for Southern Africa. I'm Ingrid Bame, and I am forming part of a collective of creatives. I'm an activist in my own right. I work within the disability space. I'm also a content curator, as well as the co-host to a show that is dedicated to persons with disability in Africa that is personified. And of course, I am one of the people that are part of this amazing work behind Numbers as Faces. The team behind the Numbers as Faces campaign, it is a creative campaign for various people from different parts of the continent, from little kiddies that are being born within a COVID era. All they know is having to put on a mask, sanitize on a regular basis. But the things that we've had to adapt to, the fact that we were in a complete lockdown and everyone was locked in their own houses, as a way of curbing the spread of COVID, while we have our scientists in different parts of the world trying to figure out how are we going to work around this disease and this virus. People are getting sick. We also see people dying. The numbers have been crazy of how many people have actually caught COVID, but also how many people have passed from COVID. And we also have good numbers in terms of recovery, but obviously we're not trying to have COVID take over our lives in itself. But before I say too much around that, I thought maybe let's start out by talking about, talking to everyone and finding out when OSISA approached us, or approached you guys rather, and was like, hey guys, we are looking to put together an entire campaign around COVID-19. We want to look at the stories, we want to look at how people were impacted, and as creatives, we want you guys to come on board and narrate the story to the rest of the world. So maybe we can start off by having a chat around that, on what your initial thoughts and feelings were. So I think I'll kick it off with Amy. So Amy, she actually is an illustrator as well as a UX designer and a photographer with a BA, a Bachelor of Arts, specializing in film production. Amy runs an online magazine, which is Hakopine, and she's also traveled in multiple countries in East Africa, and in that she photographed her experiences. She also does some exhibitions, and she's currently working on a poetry graphic book, which aims to reach people all over the world on topics that affect women on a daily basis. So yes, Amy, how are you?
I'm good. That was a beautiful introduction. Thanks for putting my life so nicely into like a nice shell. So actually when all of this started, I was traveling. So I was in South Korea. And when I came home, I was actually only supposed to be in Joburg temporarily. And then COVID hit and I was freelancing. And it was one of those moments where life sort of shifted instantly, and everything I knew about freedom and having control over my life was halted. And when I got approached to do this project, it was sort of like a silver lining for me. A lot of my friends were experiencing a lot of mental issues, especially in terms of coming to terms with the whole situation of how am I going to feed my kids? How am I going to pay for rent? And there were so many ways that we couldn't really channel that energy. And a lot of the topics that we discuss in this e-magazine, in the podcast and everything else, pretty much directly related to what people around us were experiencing, but never had the chance to express. So I was really, really grateful when this opportunity came, because I got to work with all of you guys. And it was really, I mean, it was 4 months, more than 4 months of constantly like coming to terms with what was happening, and not only in our own country, but everywhere else. And it made me really mindful and self-aware, to be grateful, to be compassionate. And I don't think if I did this project, I'm not sure where I would be in a mental space as well. This definitely lifted me and made me more self-aware of, okay, we can help beyond of ourselves and our own circles. We need to reach beyond that. And yeah, guys, this was a really beautiful experience. So that's pretty much what I got out of this. It was a lot of mindfulness and kindness and learning. And yeah, that's pretty much it from my side.
And then also, let's see how it is that we move over to Malawi. We have Lerato Honde, who is also part of the project. She's a visual artist as well as a junior architect. And she's from Lilongwe in Malawi, and through her work, she seeks to address issues pertaining to identity, empowerment, and self-worth. Her work encompasses a wide range of media, including animation, paint, design, writing, and sculpting. Lerato is also a founder and an artist within the artist collective that is Wana Collective. Miss Lerato, how are you, girl?
Hi, Ingrid. Hi again. I feel like we've been meeting over the weekends, specifically on Sundays for a while. So yeah, it's great to see all of you guys in person. But yeah, so essentially my initial thoughts for this project was I was extremely excited. I was very, very excited because these were conversations that we were having amongst our friend groups, you know, in our family groups. You'd see the WhatsApp messages about COVID-19, and there was a lot of fear and uncertainty, and some messages didn't feel so true. You didn't know who to trust. Particularly why I was excited is because I did a project prior to this with OSISA as well. And at the time, COVID-19 had arrived in Malawi, yes. We had a couple of cases here and there, but it didn't really have quite an impact. And then when this project came about, we suddenly had thousands of cases, and the population of Malawi is very small in comparison to other Southern African countries. So every day we're hearing of a friend's dad or a friend's mom who's passed away. And it was usually the older generation, but there was a lot of fear. And so I felt like with this project, just being able to speak to you guys, to speak to other creators in Southern Africa and see what the climate is like there, and just to know that we're not alone. And I think it was important that we document these stories, because maybe, hopefully, there will be no COVID-19 very soon, and we are documenting the time. There's a quote that I like about how artists, creatives, we will be immortalized by our work. So I think we are documenting this time.
With Numbers as Faces, with the whole project behind it, we are creatives in our own right. We have these skills, you know, we look at how it is that we can take our art and reflect what's happening in the world. And I think it's so important that we're doing it during this time, during such an historic time, so that we have future generations that have something to look back on. Because also from my perspective, there hasn't been a lot of art that's been put out with relation to COVID. So I guess big ups to that. And, you know, we have such beautiful graphics that come with that. And with that, actually just going all the way to Zimbabwe, to Nyerere Nyakwande, who is obviously, like I said, in Zimbabwe, and he's a graphic designer with a keen eye for detail. He merges everyday life experiences with new concepts that motivate others to action. And through his graphic design company, this is Arenik Jenny, Nyerere creates compelling and thought-provoking visuals that bring a new and fresh perspective on the African story. And this can actually be seen in the body of work that can be shared. So the only gent in the team at that. Hi, Ranyerego, how are you?
Hi, Ingrid. I'm good. It's exciting to be here and to be able to launch this thing. When we started off, it started off with a lot of ideas, with really no sense of direction. But, as we deliberated and got to know each other, and we came up with Numbers as Faces, and we are here and we are celebrating that experience. And when we started off, it was more of getting to know each other, since we are all strangers. We have never met physically, but OSISA has brought us together, with our different creative skills and talents. And when we started off, it was a moment of discovering our strengths and our weaknesses, and to be able to appreciate each other's creative skills and creative styles, and being able to bring that together and measure it and to come up with this product, it's quite an achievement for me. And I'm really excited that we are here and we are able to share with the rest of the world that what we have created as a body of creative agency in different locations, with one common goal, which is to bring awareness of how COVID has affected us as ordinary African people.
Yeah, and I think what was most interesting for me when I was roped into the project was, what are we going to do? Like, yes, this is going to be amazing, being able to cover people's stories, but where do we even start? But then we have different organizations within Africa that have, of course, been working in the background to help people within their communities with regards to that. And one of those is the Hub in Lesotho. Like I had mentioned, that we're all creatives, but the Hub is a creative technology lab in Lesotho that seeks to take a creative, collaborative, and participatory approach to raising and seeking solutions to social issues with digital arts for change within the region. So the Hub's primary target market is young people between the ages of 8 and 30 years old. And through its various activities, the Hub aims to foster a community of young people in Lesotho. And the Hub is also the only initiative of its kind in Lesotho that's doing this type of work. And part of that, part of the Hub, representing the Hub, Mary was part of our team. She is a photographer as well as the coordinator at the Hub. Hi, Mary. I know that you're not feeling too well today, but thank you that you were still able to make time to actually join us on this live. So what was it like for the Hub? Because you guys had obviously gone into lockdown just like everyone else, but work needed to continue for the youth of Lesotho, and your team actually went into, if I'm not mistaken, you guys also had to go work from home and so forth. So what was it like when OSISA approached you and said, hey, we're thinking of putting together work relating to COVID? This is something that you guys had already started doing, but also just working with a creative team from different parts of Africa, as opposed to your ordinary team in Lesotho in putting together this body of work.
Yeah, we were excited when we got the email about it. When the pandemic arrived here and we went into lockdown, at the Hub we had to change from a community center that's normally filled with kids every day to closing the center and our team working from our homes, and we kind of had to make a switch to becoming a production house for online content creation. In partnership with OSISA, we created videos, posters, podcasts, and more in Sesotho, because in the beginning there was no digital content, COVID awareness content at all in Sesotho. then get the offer to work with all you amazing creatives, it was exciting, and it was kind of an easy transition to make, because we had already for the past year or past 9 months we had been doing COVID awareness content, and also directly working with the people that we ended up interviewing for our photo essays.
And, just looking at the work that the Hub has been doing in Lesotho in itself, it's absolutely amazing. And, there's so much of it that we are sharing within the body of work that we're going to be distributing, obviously, once this live is done. But also with that, I think for me personally, when I was roped into the project, I was excited. I was like, oh, we're going to do this. And then I met the team, right? And when I met the team, they were like illustrators and graphic designers and people who can put together cartoons and photographers. And I usually just sit behind a mic, and I'm a content producer as well as a content curator. So I don't necessarily work with graphics, but I can point you out to what looks good and what doesn't look so good. So I was a bit nervous about it. I'm like, what am I going to bring to the table? What am I going to bring to the team? I can't make a graphic. I can't put together an illustration, but it's so beautiful how OSISA was able to handpick all of us and, make it work in terms of our skill sets and being able to put together that is so beautifully composed by us. For every single piece that we're going to be sharing from this campaign, there's something unique about what it is that we're bringing out, and the stories that we're sharing with that, because what the whole purpose of the project is seeing how it is that we can look at how everyday people like you and I, how we have been affected by COVID, especially within Southern Africa. There have been a lot of effects within, for instance, within the education system. We know that schools were closed for quite a while, and having to see whether we get our kids back to school or not. We also have our health systems that have been put under immense pressure, and we have people like frontline workers that have been working around the clock to ensure that we have less that we don't have so many people that are obviously dying from the virus. So that's just a small view of what it is that we had been collecting, and the stories that people had to share, the people who have actually contributed to this campaign in itself, to this project. They basically were able to be bare with themselves and actually be able to share their most intimate stories of how COVID had collected them. And this has obviously had an effect on us as a team, because, I can imagine, as I was part of it, starting out with finding out how it is that you guys personally, as the team, how you guys were affected by this. Runyerero, maybe let's start with you. Like, what were your thoughts and your feelings, as collecting these stories, as putting this together, and just hearing the intimate stories of people of how they've been affected by COVID?
It was an awakening call for me to get, deeper into the effects of COVID-19 on the community and on the ordinary person. And, one of the powerful tools that we have come up with is the e-magazine newsletter. And one of the stories that is featured in there is Deafness in a Pandemic. It's a story that Lerato edited, and it's powerful in that, looking at how people who have got difficulty in hearing and those who are disabled, how they've been affected by COVID. Everyone is wearing a mask. So how do they communicate with anyone? Because, when you are not able to hear, you need to do lip reading. And when someone is wearing a mask, it's difficult for someone to communicate. And when they take off the mask, there's a risk of them, getting contaminated. So that story is quite touching, and, it brings awareness, and it makes you think about the other people that are being affected. We are not even, in a position to know the effects that this pandemic has brought on them. So it's amazing coming up with stories that touch every aspect of the ordinary person.
And yes, it is amazing to just hear those individual stories. And part of that, I know that Mary and her team at the Hub went into the villages in Lesotho to basically capture the stories of how people in Lesotho were being affected by COVID. Maybe you could talk to us about that, from the perspective as a photographer, but also within your team, people were writing these stories and sharing, and obviously sharing these stories with the team for us to include in the e-mag. What was that experience like for you?
Sure. Yeah, so since June last year, we at the Hub started programming for kids in Morija to address school closures and food insecurity. And then from September to December, we did COVID education with elders in our surrounding villages. So when thinking of concepts for this project, it was natural to kind of want to dig deeper into what children and elders have been going through for the past year. And it was amazing. You know, it allowed us to spend time with children and elders in rural Lesotho and get a deeper understanding of the effects of the pandemic and school closures on their lives. Yeah, it wasn't happy stories that were coming out. So I'm very much looking forward to kind of getting to see some of the reactions to the stories. But their stories will definitely continue to guide our programming and, you know, just our experience, like Runirara just talked about, people with hearing impairments. So I think this experience will definitely continue to guide our programming and how we can be more inclusive in serving our community.
Yes, and it is actually quite, and it's touching stories at that. You know, these are stories that are touching us, or people who were like really, really badly affected by COVID. Amy, I know that you were, I don't know either whether it was last year or this year, you were living with frontline workers as well during this time. Yeah, when you were collecting stories, maybe you can walk us through what that experience was like for you.
Yeah. So when I initially came back from South Korea, I was living with my mom. And then COVID hit, so I felt like I needed to distance from her to keep her safe. So I moved in with a house of artists. At first, there were doctors in the house. They were frontline workers, and they were also in relationships with other doctors in the emergency department. And it was this sort of thing where half of the house were artists experiencing emotional and financial instability. And then the other half were really wealthy and pretty much at the front of the whole pandemic. They were seeing everything. They were telling me how many cases per day were coming in, how many private hospitals were struggling, how many public hospitals were struggling. And it was a very scary reality to have that inside your home, which also affected us personally because we couldn't escape the pandemic within our own safe environment. And that started to take a toll on us. And then when I got to actually work with this project, documenting and interviewing my housemates who were doctors, who were at the front line, who were experiencing more trauma than anyone, watching people lose their loved ones, and then telling me about it after their heavy day of work. It was just a lot to take in. But then I think the process of documenting it sort of neutralized it to a state where we could just see the facts and also see the people behind those stories versus seeing numbers every day and constantly being thrown at with the statistics and not really feeling like there's a way out. I think that was one of the best things that came out of this was interviewing the frontline workers I lived with to almost get their insight on, are we getting better and what can we do to be more mindful? And yeah, any advice that they could give us, and also keeping track of what they were feeling. Because I think being at the front line, experiencing all of the pain that's coming with people losing their loved ones and feeling scared is an emotional toll that a lot of people aren't really aware of, because we just assume frontline workers are supposed to be strong and they, you know, are responsible. But there are also people who have families and they have children and they have to go home to that, and we forget that. So I think bringing light to that was really important, and yeah, I'm really glad the team could do that.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I think even in the podcast, there was a point where I spoke about how frontline workers are just ordinary people. They're just like anyone else. They have lives, they have people, they have family, and they are literally the ones that are exposed to coronavirus the most out of that. But also, like I said, that was, you know, some of the things that I was mentioning within the podcast. Yes, we do have a Numbers as Faces podcast, but maybe Lerato can talk to us about, you know, collecting stories for the podcast. You know, as much as we're audio collecting stories for the entire body of work. There are certain audio clips that we had to collect specifically for the podcast in itself, and maybe what that experience was like for you, Lerato.
So when we were coming up with ideas for deliverables, creative outputs, I think the podcast really stood out to me because this reminds me actually of a conversation I was having with my friend, also the co-founder of One Collective. And we were saying that we need to make sure, like we don't like this idea of us or artists or organizations or people who have the capacity to share stuff to be titled as the voice for the voiceless. I think that everybody has a voice. Everybody has the capacity to share. So with the podcast, we were featuring people and getting them to actually just speak for themselves and not filter that. So I think that was really powerful for me. And the stories that we had were so diverse. You know, we had stories from lovers, we had stories from musicians. Actually, I think one of my favorite stories was from Suffix, a Malawian artist who made a song called Mizozi, which means tears. And it's nice to see how in their own capacity, people are really just speaking to the emotional aspect of COVID-19. It's beyond staying safe. It's beyond the campaign messages that tell you that you must mask up. It's also, we're humans, we have feelings and we operate with emotions.
Yeah, I think for me, the episode with Suffix was also really interesting episode at that. One of my favorite episodes as part of the podcast. And I think also part of that, Lerato was literally sitting in Malawi and I was sitting in South Africa. And on Sundays, we'd come together and we'd be sitting on Zoom, just like we're sitting now, and we'd be recording an entire podcast. And mind you guys, it sounds spectacular. I don't know how in the world we were able to execute an entire podcast from different parts of, you know, of the continent in itself. But even more to that, how we were actually able to put together this brilliant body of work, guys. You know, I really am gonna pat myself on the back and pat the rest of the team on the back, because I have to say what we've put together is beautiful. The pieces are uniquely written. The pieces actually encapsulate what it is that people are going through and what they're sharing. But the most amazing part about it is that more often than not, when a collective of people come together to work on a project, especially a creative project, they would get into a room together, they would put together, brainstorm on ideas, how we're going to do this, how we're going to do that. But we were actually able to do this virtually, guys. That's absolutely amazing. The fact that we went virtual, we had meetings on a weekly basis to give progress on how we're doing this, how we're doing that, are we finishing this, are we finishing that. So it's very interesting to have had obviously us being able to work on that. And maybe you guys could give like your thoughts and your views on how we were able to pull this together. How were we able to work virtually as people in separate countries, getting online and being able to put together an entire body of work, almost working just over 3 months on something as amazing as this, you know? So maybe Mary, we can start it off with you and telling us how you guys had already been working in isolation and how it is that, you know, you found it just working virtually with us, because you have an entire team with you at the hub, but with us, we're all sitting in different regions and yet we pulled it off.
Yeah, in the beginning, it definitely wasn't easy. It was something very new to all of us. And even though our team, we live in a very small village, but we were still encouraging everyone to stay at home and work from home. And it for sure has its challenges, but some of the really powerful things that have come out of it is, you know, collaborations like this one that we've just completed that I definitely would never have thought of doing before. And we've even held, instead of holding in-person concerts for young people in Morija, we held a competition online to encourage songwriting about issues like many of the ones that we take on in this project. So it's been a learning curve, a steep learning curve, for our team at least. But yeah, so many amazing things have come out of this, and we've even already started to work on some collaborations outside of the Numbers as Faces project between the hub and some of the team members here. So I think great things have come out of it.
Absolutely amazing things have come out of that. Amy, what for you? We literally are almost, I think we're about 15-20 minutes drive away from each other, and yet we're putting together a whole body of work. Literally, it's crazy.
I think we need to meet up firstly. Okay, so I think the whole process of this whole project coming together was an act of really good communication and consistency. And the fact that all of us were accountability buddies, essentially, where if somebody couldn't do something, we would help them out. If somebody was overwhelmed, we'd help them out. And I think it was really nice that we were in tune with, beyond the project, also our own emotional state and financial situations. And it wasn't like the pandemic stopped while we were working. We were very much in it. And I think working virtually was pretty strange. I remember the first meeting, I didn't see anybody's face. And then the second meeting, I didn't see anybody's face. And then it was like 20 meetings later and I still hadn't seen anyone's face. But essentially, I think it was also cool because I got to know you guys and your voices and what you do. And I got to watch progress like happen, like an idea from one conversation or an actual podcast. It was really amazing never seeing you guys, but seeing what you came up with. And then in the end, we were rewarded with this, where we got to finally see each other. And I'm really happy we got to do that. And that we have this moment here now to be more present and to actually enjoy what we've made and be grateful and be thankful and be proud of each other. It was a lot of work and it was a lot of stuff that we learned. But I'm really happy that we did it. And yeah, the virtual aspect wasn't that hard at all. I think it was really good, a really good form of communication.
How did you find the virtual aspect of it, Wenyerero, all the way in Zimbabwe and also working with the team of just women? Did we give you a headache? If we did, please let us know.
Well, I think it's been amazing for me to work with you guys. When we started off, we are in Southern Africa, different locations, different languages. We speak differently and everything. When we started off, some of you couldn't even pronounce my name and stuff like that. But, as time went on, you had to learn, which is good. But I think, our strength was that we took ownership of the project and, we went for it. We were in it 100%. And because this is our thing, facilitated, yes, by OSISA, but we took it as our thing and we wanted it to be a success. And I believe that, it's something that, we're saying that we finished the project, but I think that we are launching the project because this is something that is going to kickstart conversations everywhere. And people are going to talk about this. And we're hoping that, by creating this awareness, people are going to find a solution to this. So it's been interesting to be able to have meetings every week, to deliberate, to come up with ideas and, to help each other and to understand each one's weakness and their strength and being able to give each other an opportunity to work and to appreciate each other's work. It's been so good.
Absolutely. And like Runyarora has said, that as much as this is an OSISA project, we have been the ones who have owned it. They've given us creative freedom. They've allowed for us to basically put out how we feel and what our perspectives and what the world's perspective has been around COVID-19 and how it has affected them. And like he said, we're not done. We are actually launching this project. We put all the work together and now we're ready to distribute it to the rest of the world for you guys to see your stories, for you guys to see what it is that we do have to share. So with that, this is the official launch. of the hashtag Numbers as Faces Creative Campaign. Part of that is an e-magazine that we are actually going to be sharing with the world, with various stories of how different people from different parts of Southern Africa were affected by COVID-19. And also with that, we also have a podcast, a 10-part series podcast that has gone live. We actually have the trailer up, so you guys might want to go check that out. But yes, let's just start first with the e-magazine. Maybe you could tell us what it is that everyone can expect from obviously accessing this e-magazine and paging through it and seeing what it is that we put together.
Well, the e-magazine is something that really put us together. You know, it's something that each and every one of us has got their footprint on it. You know, great story writing, great illustrations, great photos. You know, really excited about to be able to dish out to the whole world to experience, you know, what we have experienced on the ground here. And, you know, it's something that, you know, it's amazing work. It's amazing work. We never really thought about how this thing is going to be this big and how it's going to, you know, take this shape. I remember deliberating about it, and we didn't even have these numbers as faces initially. It's something that came up in the conversations, and, you know, and then it stood out, and then we went for it, and, you know, people started bringing in stories. They reached out to their friends, neighbors, collecting stories, writing down these things, and, you know, taking photographs, doing illustrations. It was a lot of work that has been put into this thing. And with us, I think it's available for downloads on the website. And if you follow any of our social media handles, you can find a link and you can download it and share it to as many people as you want. It's free and it's from us, from the heart. We have managed to put out a 64-page newsletter that is full of amazing stories for you guys to just discover how COVID has affected us people on the ground.
So yes, there are some amazing stories, some very touching stories of how it is that COVID has affected us in this e-magazine. Like has mentioned, you'll be able to find this on the OSISA website, but I'll be giving you guys details of where it is that you can find exactly what way, where you can find your links, where you can access this amazing work. But part of that, of course, like I mentioned, is the podcast, the 10-piece podcast. It was hosted by myself and Lerato Honde, and with that, you know, I think she should just quickly share on what it is that people can expect.
So with the podcast series, like Ingrid mentioned, we have 10 parts, and with each episode, we share different stories. Ingrid and I kind of just take you through the conversations, through the interviews, and some of the episodes are transcribed into the magazine. But essentially, we cover topics such as education, girl learners going back to school after falling pregnant. You know, the numbers are actually quite high of the number of girls dropping out of school during this COVID period. So just the social repercussions and what it's like to produce music, to produce photos, to be a photographer. We have all sorts of different topics. Losing a loved one, I think that was very emotional, and suffering from the same thing that your family member has died from. So yeah, very touching. We laughed, we cried. It was quite a journey.
It certainly was quite a journey, an emotional one at that. Like Lerato says, we laughed, we cried, but like she had even mentioned earlier, we are not the voice of the voiceless. We basically just took people's stories and we reflected on what they had to share. So it isn't a podcast of me and Lerato just talking and talking. We actually have people who have shared their stories, who told us via audio of, you know, what experiences they've had. People who are dating Mr. Pandemic, you know, artists, how they have been affected, and plenty more stories that we're sharing on that. So you guys are able to access this. We're going to be sharing links on where it is that you can access, of course, the e-magazine in itself, as well as the Numbers as Faces podcast. Should you actually just go onto your streaming platform, search for Numbers as Faces podcast, you'll definitely find it there. But also, if you follow our hashtag, it is hashtag Numbers as Faces. and you will find each piece that will be released on almost a day-to-day basis. Like Winyarero had mentioned, it's a 64-page e-magazine, so there are a lot of stories that are covered in there. So we're going to be releasing blog posts on some of the stories that we have covered, but the whole intent is for you to access the entire magazine, for you to flip through everything and see what it is that you are sharing with the rest of the world, of course. And I guess that's all from us right now. Expect the first episode of the podcast that will be coming out tomorrow, which is Friday at 12 p.m. If you go to www.osisa.org, you should be able to also access the e-magazine in itself and also access some blog posts that we obviously have, little snippets of what it is that you can expect in the e-magazine. And with that, I guess this is a wrap. And guys, thank you so much for us being able to come together as a collective, as a team, as creatives, to put together this beautiful body of work. I really hope that the general public is actually going to appreciate, or rather be able to look into these stories and just see what everyday experiences of COVID are like. We have these conversations amongst ourselves as people, but I have never seen stories that are coming out as a collective of stories relating to how it is that we have been affected by COVID. But also a huge thank you to the Open Society Initiative for Southern Africa. This is the OSISA team, the comms team specifically, for roping us in on this project, but also for supporting us and helping us and being a sounding board for all of the thoughts and ideas that we had. Part of the team was Levi, as well as Patricia. Tiama was also part of it, as well as Lebo, who's actually helping us out with this whole live, as well as to those who contributed. Like we said, these aren't our stories alone. These are everyone's stories. We have a lot of people that have contributed to this. People in Malawi, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Lesotho, who shared the most intimate of stories with us and basically shared, and we are sharing it with the world for all of us to consume and have. But yeah, and also thank you to you, the viewer, the person who's going to be checking out all of this content, the person that's going to be reading through our e-magazine and listening to our podcast. Thank you for actually engaging on topics relating to COVID. We know we hear COVID every now and again. This is happening, that is happening, numbers are rising. But in that, we need to keep ourselves tuned with what's happening, but also being able to just see the personal stories and the personal experiences of, the everyday person who was affected by COVID. And yeah, we live in a COVID world. Let's continue staying safe. Of course, we're seeing talks about different waves, the third wave in South Africa that might be coming out. So we are still within the pandemic. So let's ensure that we do social distance when in public. Let's keep sanitizing, as well as ensuring that we're keeping ourselves safe and those allowed around us safe as well. So together, let's face the numbers and see the people behind these numbers as they are just that, people. Thank you, everyone.
Mahlomola lefatshe le ya lla le fuli hana gele kalla batho ba shoba fela ba hlokahala ha o sa thukgotsa fulengala o so thlogo di tutemadi ya rote politiki sintsena re phela mnyamatsana sa pafolo tshla nganto jena ya kala we bona ya letsaba le vula corona bana ba dikolo re sa ba bona boka moso ba bona na ba tla bo bona yena kotsi mesebetsi tlala phile matla thusa ramasedi ha solo soto whatse ke tlokotsi re sokola le metsi a hlapa matswa muso gona kelo hloko le setšhaba ba re buisa ka bogopo ho holo ke diketseletso tsa babelelo ba swa ditsimba sa thodi tshebeletso na ke tlekefetso le ha le jolo ba sotho ha ne re tlhokomele ha ga dikerekeng sita le mabenkeleng re kwahele re sanitize matswa tšhaba sa lepoko ha re lwane mmoho maybe re ka thola go ha re ka kopanya maboko
Look at the way the government got us drowning, we never had a choice. They claim the youth is young to even have a voice, but they get surprised when we offer crown to fill the void. While the changing leaders like two sides of the same coin. Yeah, come election day, the change will never happen, cause we electing different heads of the same dragon. The pain of watching the government slowly killing our passion. Yeah, and they wonder why we're stuck in depression. The way youth is dying from losing hope, man, is way wrong. You're sort of protected, so who should we put all this blame on? They let me out with do this and that. They sing the same song, they winning, they forget you're the reason they got a day job. No matter what, we will thrive through the weather, cause this passion that we have it now is God-given. Black child, you should know that you matter.
It's for the people.
Don't ever let them tell you different.
We've been going through the worst, struggling just to make a living. Been thinking about the future and I fear for all our children, cause we starve while corruption continues to pocket millions. And those who lost jobs have resorted to pocket picking. Every day another victim, this life is getting harder. The last year we're transitioning, seems we have a lot of talkers, cause action's what is missing, it's like nobody is bothered. But how do you expect a seed to grow when it's not watered? It's on us to take a stand in order to see a difference. All we need to do is be consistent, pay attention to restrictions. This is deeper than the mask, all it takes is just a touch, so you gotta wash your hands. We're not the only country that has lost a lot of fam, so taking care of yours should be the biggest task. And together we can conquer any obstacle at hand. Said together we can conquer any obstacle at hand.
Living in poverty, dreams of better days, a broken democracy, so many viruses, COVID-19 taking too many lives, choosing who it's minusing, airborne, new age grim reaper, it kills without question, Jason Bourne, like the days of crusades and the ancient storm, the days of the plague and the sacred war. It ain't safe outside, please stay indoors, get a PlayStation, you could play with boards, philosophical, let's make a statement, I'm a magician, make 20 million disappear like Lesotho's government, make it reappear in another bank account, stealing for the sake of it, new leaders, you better bring new change, sick and tired of a different suit, same game, tryna cop the same bag of change.
Hey. Lefatshe le lero le fefo ke santwa, COVID-19 ya hlafatsa dibata. Bana ba jang ba ntho re dula ka matlong, ya ba ka mo ferefere di-price tsa ferekana. Mo aisana shwa ke tlala ntse re shebile, hoba he nowadays everybody we chebile. Saka ke saka nkauza ya ka ke yaka, ka bloma ka phola ka hopla mo ke tswang teng, godumo ra ifenetha mo re hlante. Madi a ngwana le boqona ke mo ke antseng, ba re ke ntshapedi ya ke hlolwe ke sebata. Dirao senka macheke pukaletso bata, bachaba heso tsohang phomolo fedile. We got a mind that poverty can't kill, got the spirit that nobody could kill. Hey, sanitize and protect yourself.
Basotho ba moshasho ha re mameleng, sky ke tsa Thomas mamela ke letso, sehlo sa bona metswele ke na masihlwane polokego ya setšhaba ye mazong a hao, o hlape matsogo kgafetsa gola maske godimo mahlwana na ke tsana a kopele mmuso kwana botebo maphelo bona ke ba hao, re ithepetletsa Java sa desile ya makatsa ke bona le swaswa empa Java se ya tsamaya re hlomphe mbo megala peng ho bona ke bona motlodi ya bophelo re bengatana re phela mehleng ya bofelo tlatla matshole re thuse bile re nke diteto ha re ka robala bona re ya se ka ma re tshwareleng ka matsoho e se re hlonama.
Gruesome conditions of living, but we done made it out. At a young age, I learned to be man of the house. A red nose didn't make a hood nigga with clown. It came from the cat sniffing the Hamatala provides. Started jotting as a means of running from the reality to rob me of my peace and then feed me nothing. Rocking only the flies, the clothes, cause coming up we ain't had them in circumstance, I suppose. Idolizing criminals and women with enhanced features. What can schools teach us? We saw the first lady get away with murder, but I know a sister who's in jail for abortion. They impaled her, and that's sad.
So it starts when the government ignores the people's plea, shuts the door, then resorts to force all of us to just stay indoors while they all go out to get a full meal course. I'm talking about millions, that's how it goes. Politics ruin everything, there's nothing close. With the rules and regulations that's now imposed, make it hard to use your brain when your mind is closed. Look,
It's hard to get a job without connections. Gotta know who and who just to make an entrance. Got you thinking by the time you had your graduations, when you thought your certificate would make a difference. Can't practice math, you gotta practice patience. When things don't add, you gotta go to basics. When you have no cash, you gotta go to Vegas. When your skin's all black, you gotta face the matrix.
Mahlomula lefatshe ya lla le fuli hana gele kalla batho ba shoba fela ba shwakahala ha o sa tu kgotsa fulengala so tu tlhogo e tu ya madi ya rote politiki sintsena ha re phela mnyamatsana sa pa folo tsetla nna